Hello, so today is going to be our weekly tier list, which is this time going to be talking about units. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank all the units in the set, and I'll be breaking them down by cost, talking a little bit about how I think they fit into the roles based on the current patch, which is 15.3. If you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. Normally I'm doing guide related content. We recently had a rank up guide, which was one of the bigger projects for me. And then next week we're going to do item guides. So either starting Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm going to be drumming out the item guides updated for set 15. So make sure to like and subscribe if you're looking forward to that. And there's also the VOD channel. I did some VOD reviews, so I took a little bit of a break on the VOD channel, but I'll resume doing daily uploads on Monday for that. Anyways, let's go through them. I'm ranking the units from S to D tier. When I talk about the units, something that's important is when we talk about low cost units, I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on how they behave either as reroll or as a early game item holder. Obviously, if they're really strong with reroll, that will make them a little bit stronger in my eyes, but also if they're good at their job of holding items, I will also value them really high. Additionally, with the 4 and 5 costs, it's going to come down to a lot of like their utility as well, especially with the 5 costs. So let's start. Aatrox, double synergy tank. He's not the craziest tank in the game, but the double synergy makes him a really good unit to hold on to and just has really good synergies. He has Juggernaut and Heavyweight, so 2 of the frontline traits, and he has Mighty Mech, which often is really strong early game. You just get a whole extra unit on your board if you have a Mighty Mech opener. So even though Aatrox, he might not be like the most absorbent of damage, and even if you have like an Aatrox 3, he's not going to be like that crazy monster, but I think really good just because of the synergies that he provides. Ezreal's, I don't know where I put Ezreal. I'm going to start him off in B tier and just say he's average. I could be wrong with this. I might move him up later. He's either A tier or B tier, but I think I'm going to fill out A tier with a lot of units because I think a lot of the 1 costs are in a really good spot right now. But with Ezreal, really good item holder of AP items. He does do quite a bit of damage. I just find these are like a little bit slow, even if you get that Prodigy going. And then obviously like Battle Academia opener with like the whole like Prodigy Battle Academia units works out really nicely. So he's really good. He's definitely a good unit. I just think that there's ones that I kind of like to itemize or hold on to a little bit more aggressively. Garen, for example. I think Garen's A tier. Garen actually is really nice to have early and as an upgrade. He's pretty tanky. He's hard to chew through. And then if you have an early Battle Academia opener, he also permanently gains health as the game goes on. So a lot of times if you have a Garen start and you kind of like proceed into like a Battle Academia board, he actually gets pretty tanky towards the end of the game. So he has some late game value. There's also some win conditions. If you guys watch my Ornn Artifact guide, I talked about it a little bit. But something like Innervating Locket on Garen, you can literally just carry a Garen 2 up till like level 10. It's like unkillable at one point. It actually becomes absurd. So like you have a unit that's like, decent in some lines, has some value late game, good synergies because he just fits in really nicely with the Battle Academia board. Similar to Ezreal, of course, right? These are both cornerstones of playing Battle Academia, but then also has like these extra little conditions that are kind of goofy. So we're going to put in A tier. Gnar for sure is S tier. So Gnar just attacks a lot. His main thing is that he just does a bunch of auto attacks. Gnar is like the cornerstone of playing any sort of AD auto attacking line. So if you're playing him into Ashe, playing into late game TF, or you're just tempoing. Gnar with a Gambler's Blade is absolutely fucking broken. A lot of times you can fast 9 off a Gnar 2 with a Gambler's Blade. He also has the bonus fruit. We should also talk about power-ups here. He also gets, what's it called? The one where you get, it's not Midas Touch. I'll figure. Golden Edge. He gets Golden Edge. Guinsoo Golden Edge Gnar. He actually stacks this so high. You actually can just fast 9 off of him. Like not even worrying about your augments or anything else. And he also does a lot of damage. And with Luchador, if you have like the Luchador to put in at one point in the game, he actually is really stable all the way up until like stage 4. So he's just an OP 1 cost. If you have like a Gnar upgrade early, you can easily play around it and just put yourself in a really good spot. It's just one of those units you have to look out for. Definite S tier. Kalista, I'm going to put her in the same tier as Ezreal. Sometimes Kalista can pop off similarly to Ezreal. I think she's definitely good. She has this ability where she targets the furthest enemy and she can scam a lot of fights on stage 2. However, I just find that her casting and her damage is kind of like awkward, as well as her synergies and traits. If you have like a Soul Fighter opener where you can get to 4 Soul Fighter, this Callista definitely can do numbers. But outside of like those 4 Soul Fighter situations, I find that she's just a worse version of some of the other AD units that you might want to itemize early, or some of the backline carries that you have an option of itemizing. Kale, I'm gonna be honest. So Kale reroll is one thing, right? She's really good if you get to level 9. I'm gonna put her in C tier, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit. So Kale, in my opinion, does not really function without specific items. You can't just put a set of items. Even Gnar, right? Gnar, you can put some variable items on him, right? With Kale, if you don't have Guinsoo, this unit just doesn't really do anything. She has the Wraith synergy, which is nice, and you can obviously play around the Wraith synergy with Duelist and stuff like that, but I feel like she's always a worse option of holding items for most of the game. I think in terms of the 1 cost, I'm very like against her compared to like some of the other ones. Of course, you could argue that she's B or even A. She does have a win condition, right? Like if you make it to level 9 Kale, that is something crazy that you can play around. But even in the current landscape of 15.3, I don't even think level 9 Kale cuts it as a viable strategy with a lot of the other lines that are there. Because if you're just gonna like go fast 9 or do something like that, you're better off with like Varus carry. And a lot of times those Kale boards really rely on the Varus being the cap potential there. Maybe I'm a little bit harsh, by the way. If you are a Kale enjoyer and you play Kale every game, I do not mean any offense when I do these tier lists. I'm just saying, in my personal opinion, when I look at this unit, I am less likely to play and itemize around a Kale early as I am some of these other units. That's kind of how it is, more like a likeliness. Obviously, if I have a Kale too, I'll put items on the Kale, but I'm probably going to swap her out as soon as I have an option, because she really needs like Guinsoo AP in order to actually do stuff. So it's a little bit awkward, especially since there's no other units in the game that really want like Guinsoo AP in particular that you can switch off of her with. Kennen, I think Kennen's in B tier. I think he's really tanky in some protector lines. He has a stun, which is really great, but B doesn't mean bad, by the way, right? A kind of means like these are like a little bit above average, like they have some like cool things. B is like average, right? These are units that I'm happy to see, I'm happy to play, happy to itemize, happy to use. It's just I don't think he's anything special when I play him. That's just a me thing. I find that, like, you know, in some of the reroll lines, when you get to 6 protector, he's like a little bit better, but he's never like the main tank even in those lines. So I kind of put him in that B tier, just like, you know, something I often end up playing around because of synergies, but not necessarily enjoy playing around. Lucian is definite A tier. Lucian, I think, is a little bit slept upon. Even now that Sork's got nerfed, I think a lot of people don't like to play around like a Sork mech kind of opener. Lucian is a great unit. So Lucian does a lot of damage. Lucian has pretty good fruits as well. One of the big things that's really important is this last thing, right? When Lucian misses, if you read the last sentence, he restores mana. A lot of units, especially 1 cost, they're very capable of missing 1 cost and 2 cost. It's part of being a lower cost unit that eventually gets outcapped by other units. Part of the fact of TFT is that these low cost units usually suck, and they have some sort of glaring flaw, because if they were broken, then everybody would just play the 1 cost and reroll the 1 cost. Lucian has like a bit of bad luck protection built in. That's a very primo feature. It's a very premium feature to see on a 1 cost, that if they miss, they get a refund. There's a lot of other units that can miss. We'll talk about Sivir in a second. Sivir can straight up just miss her entire ult. There were units like 2 cost units that recently got buffed to not miss as often because of how bad it was. And then you have Lucian sitting around here where he has a mana refund, and it's a pretty decent one. A lot of times he can get a second ult off with 1 extra auto if he just whiffs his ult entirely. So it's actually a really good feature. In addition to that, he does do quite a bit of damage, and he has Mighty Mech, which you can often play into an easy opener. Lucian's one of those units that you often, in my opinion, hold on to. Even if you're not playing Sorks, you can always just play like a Lucian Mighty Mech into like a Rise board, or a Lucian Mighty Mech into a Yuumi board later. It's a little bit harder of a pivot in certain cases, but he's a good AP item holder as well. Malphite, I think, is A tier. Malphite is like really tanky, and Malphite has a built-in passive where he gets a lot of armor. The other thing that's great about Malphite is that he does an insane amount of damage. Even at 2-star, if you look and you watch like a fight play out, Malphite with some items on him, and especially like armor items, if you start with like a Bramble Vest or Bramble Vest Augment, it's often like a 5 streak just because the Malphite himself is tanking and then just clapping fools and like doing absolute absurd damage. Really reliable as a unit, but then also a cornerstone of being like one of those good reroll units as well. So you have multiple lines, multiple options. Often when you see a Malphite early, you can play towards like a lot of different variations, a lot of different ideas that can go through your head there. So, you know, like I said, you don't have to reroll the Malphite, but even if you don't reroll him, he's still going to be pretty reliable on stage 2 and stage 3. So he's somebody that you're usually happy to see. Definite A tier to me. Nefiri just got nerfed. Nefiri used to be like the A tier, like used to be like really, really good. I don't know after the nerfs where I put Nefiri, because I honestly have not played many Nefiris in the recent patch, like on the recent patch. So I'm gonna leave Nefiri in A tier just because I think that she's still really good, but you know, she might be B tier. Actually, you know what? I'll put her in B tier just to be safe. We'll put her like up here just to symbolize that she could be either or. But basically, Nefiri in the past used to be like insanely hard to kill because the shielding and then the damage, she basically like didn't die. And if you got Soul Fighter in, she also was like pretty reliable as a tank. Plus Juggernaut, she was like a damage dealer, melee style tank user kind of thing. Her fruits are really bad though. That's like the main reason why I'm not unsure if she's A or B tier, because before she was like really hard to kill. Now she got nerfed, so she might be a little bit easier to kill. I find that the fruits on Nefiri are pretty bad. They're all like damage focused a lot of the time. So unless you have Soul Fighter in and you're playing like melee items, which isn't very great on the current patch 15.3, there's kind of like a little bit of awkwardness in those early game scenarios. But I'll put Nefiri in B tier, okay? Rel, I think Rel's pretty good. Nothing about Rel really screams to me. Rel does have a really good Star Guardian bonus and is really great if you're playing to Star Guardian. But as an early game unit and an early game tank, I don't find that the Rel is that crazy whenever I play her. She mostly does like damage, it feels like, and she kind of has like a bit of like reduction, which makes her kind of tanky. But like at the same time, like I don't know. I guess with Star Guardian she's really good. Maybe I'll just put her in A tier with Star Guardian. It's kind of hard. Like there's this one opener, obviously, where you play Battle Academia with Syndra, right? You basically just play, like, this is why it's hard to rank the individual units for me, because you just play this, right? You play Garen, Rel, this and this. But if I'm going for a tank, I usually tank Garen in these setups. And if I'm going for a damage dealer, I usually damage dealer Syndra, because these are just the better options of the two, is what it feels like. The only time the Rel is better is if you're not playing like towards this flex board and instead you have like a Giga Battle Academia board, because then the Rel is just getting like Giga stats, so then the Rel becomes like the main carry, but like, or sorry, the main tank. But like on her own, she's a little bit like eh. So I'll put her in A tier, because like in those Star Guardian spots she becomes a kind of a demon, because with the shielding and the healing and all the other stuff she becomes like a really, really good one cost. But I don't think she's anything crazy. Sivir has let me down many times, and the whiffing that the Sivir does absolutely tilts me. Now maybe Sivir is B tier. I'm okay with this, but I don't think she's much better than B tier as like as an itemized carry, because she does pretty good, but she takes really long to get her ults off. Even though you can reroll her in like those crew setups, and you can reroll her with the new like protector sniper board, she's pretty reliable if you get like much more sniper in her and much more like frontline to support her. But most of the time I find that she kind of falls off really hard even if you play those reroll lines, and she doesn't have much utility early game, I find, because she's like, how do I phrase it, she doesn't have much use early game, because like I'd rather itemize somebody else a lot of the time. So a lot of times when I'm playing Sivir, it's usually because I'm forced to play around Sivir, and I would much rather play, like, you know, if I could, I would just play the Gnar in a similar board. I'm willing to put her in C tier. You know, we'll put her in B tier just to be nice. I don't want to piss anybody off. Syndra is definite S tier. These are the two sides of the coin. A lot of times you have AD items, you want to play Gnar. A lot of times you have APMs, you want to play Syndra. That's just kind of how the way the patch is right now in 15.3. Syndra got nerfed. She's still really broken. Syndra has this thing called Rising Chaos, which is just like fucking absurd. It's so broken, but basically she just scales and deals more damage the longer the fight goes on, because every cast she just does additional damage. It's kind of nuts. And she can also snipe random units, which can also sway a fight instantly. She's just really good. She has primo features, right? Like Star Guardian, Prodigy. You don't even have to play around Crystal Gambit, but if you wanted to, she also provides Crystal Gambit. So it's just crazy. Usually if you're playing any sort of AP line, no matter what it is, you often just itemize towards a Syndra. Even a Syndra 1, a lot of times, like if you hit Rising Chaos, a Syndra 1 is good enough to like play rather than like a lot of other units, even more expensive units. So definite S tier. And then Zac. I think Zac's like kind of alright. I'll put him in B tier. Nothing screams to me crazy with Zac. And maybe I'll just move Sivir down. I kind of like this breakdown. But maybe Rel a little bit lower. Maybe something like this. I'm kind of down. A lot of these are very spot dependent, right? Like almost all of these in A and B tier, and even C tier, it's like it really depends on your items, your opener, and the types of things. But it's like a lot of times, like these are the ones you're really looking for. I always hold on to Aatrox because he just has double synergy. Lucian's really good. Malphite, good. Garen, good. And then Rel is just somewhere like, you know, maybe I can spread it out even more, right? I can do like this. But then this just looks like I'm insulting the C tier, you know what I mean? So I don't want to do that. So I'd rather just do this. And I think we're good to go. Alright. Clear. Let's go to the 2 cost. Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo, I think, is pretty reliable as a tank. He's really hard to deal with, even after the nerfs. I think he's definitely A tier. I don't think he's broken, but he's a really good item holder. Pretty good in mid-game. There are some reroll lines that use him, which is obviously a little plus on the ranking. But he's not essential to reroll at all. And Luchador makes it so that he basically gets like a massive heal. Even after the Luchador nerfs, he's still pretty reliable in those mid-game scenarios. And he can often find himself on some final boards if you're playing deep into Juggernaut. So he's just a pretty good unit. Gangplank, I don't really think is that great anymore. I'm gonna put Gangplank in C tier. This might be a little bit of an over, like, you know, overly like being critical of Gangplank. I just find this unit never really does anything. Since the nerfs, I feel like I don't even like to have items on him that often, because I find that unless I have some sort of melee item that gives him some sort of like Omnivamp or survivability, he kind of just dies before he gets anything going. Before he was kind of a demon, he just did an insane amount of damage and he scammed everybody. Everybody remembers the Gangplank patch, of course. But then even that, like now they even nerfed the amount. I think they nerfed his gold generation as well. Or if they didn't, it definitely doesn't feel as impactful because it's so hard for him to get kills. So before you would just itemize Gangplank always and use him as like a gold generation tool, I don't even think that's viable anymore. So unless I have like a crazy spot where I have perfect Gangplank or I have really good options for Gangplank items, I would much rather itemize other units, even like 1 cost, right? If I have Ashe items, I'd rather itemize a Gnar than itemize a Gangplank. Do you know what I mean? But anyways, Janna, I think Janna has great synergy. She's definitely in B tier. Her synergies are great. Protector and Strategist, she finds her way into a lot of boards, which is really nice. So she gets a lot of play. And additionally, I think that she's just a great unit to hold on to for also giving you Crystal Gambit. I think Crystal Gambit's a lot better this patch just to get some cash out. Not necessarily to play vertical Crystal Gambit, but they buffed like the 3 Crystal Gambit cash out stuff, like how it scales up. So you might also be able to just play Crystal Gambit into pivot into a board and just play up resources. So that's a big plus for Janna. And then also, the Protector Strategist works out on a lot of nice lines. I feel like she used to be a big damage dealer. They nerfed her out of PvE, so she never really fits that role of like holding damage items in my opinion. But she does have decent spread, which is nice. Like you can put like utility items on her, like Morello or Void Staff, because she'll hit multiple units. But I think she does her job. B tier, right? Solid unit. Jhin, I put in A tier. Jhin has some reroll lines. I feel like outside of Jhin reroll, however, this Jhin isn't that great of a unit. I'll explain why. So like when he is not 3-star, his attack speed is a little bit lower than when he is 3-star. And it's a pretty noticeable jump and a pretty noticeable difference. Now, Jhin also has really good fruits, so he can be a great item holder for a lot of like mid-game items. But you really need a front line that supports him. So he's definitely like in A tier because the reroll line obviously works out really nicely. And obviously if you have a really good front line, he can be a really great item holder in the mid game. But I'm not going to put him much above A tier. I don't think he's an S tier unit because I think the reroll line isn't particularly S tier. And I think that depending on your items, if you're building more towards like attack speed or anything like that, he's a little bit more awkward in the mid game. Additionally, his traits are a little bit awkward because Wraith is just like hard to play around often. With the boards that you want to play Jhin with. And then Sniper is something that's like, you know, it's pretty cool, but like it doesn't synergize very nicely sometimes. It's like, it's hard to say, but it's hard to explain, but it's just like, it pops off later is the main thing. And when it pops off, it's really good, but it's only in certain situations. So I'm going to put him in A tier. Kai'Sa, I think, is in that S tier slot. Kaisa is great mid-game and early game. She's pretty strong, pretty reliable to play around. Kaisa is a unit that if you see a single copy of Kaisa, because of the passive where she scales, you can often commit towards a Kaisa reroll, and a lot of the Kaisa reroll lines are pretty flexible. I actually did a how to play Supreme Cell video yesterday, which has talked a lot about it, so I'm not going to try and be super redundant in this video, because obviously it's recent history that I just talked about the line. But she's getting the S tier slot primarily because of her reroll potential. I want to make that very clear. She still fits into other boards. You can still play her as an item holder, of course. But her kit is just so good, and right now she's just so strong. So, like, you know, obviously in the future she gets nerfed, then she might be a little bit, like, lower on the list. But she basically gets built-in from Supreme Cell Execute. She gets built-in damage amp from Supreme Cell. She gets built-in attack speed from Duelist. And she has a passive that scales her AD. She basically scales on all, she basically, not scales, she scales AD, but she basically has all the stats that you want to actually hit like a freaking nuke. And then all you need is some crit, and she's actually like a monster. So if you have early crit items and a Kaisa, a lot of times you just literally just commit to Kaisa reroll, like off one Kaisa, which is a little bit absurd, but it's just like it has such a high cap and such a powerful potential that a lot of times it's like worthwhile. So she's definitely in that S tier. Katarina. I don't know where I put Katarina anymore. She got kind of nerfed, and I feel like Katarina reroll is still pretty strong, but I don't think that's that crazy. I don't really like her as an item holder anymore. In the past, I used to love playing Katarina as an item holder of AP items. Like, let's say I was playing like Battle Academia. I would like Battle Academia, put Archangels on Katarina, then I would sell the Katarina later and then put the items on Yumi. And that felt really strong earlier in the set. After some nerfs to Katarina, as well as just some general nerfs to like everything, and the way things shaped out, I find that she's not super reliable as a carry anymore like that, where you could just put items on her and then pivot onto the Yumi. Additionally, I think the Katarina reroll line now is a little bit dependent on some external factors to really pop off, compared to some of the other 2-cost rerolls like Kaisa and Jin. I think that with Katarina, you really need either a Radiant item or Ornn artifact in order to actually make it like relevant relative to those other comps. So, you know, it's still playable, it's still great, but she's definitely in that average tier, right? If you have a good Katarina spot, you can still go top 4 and even win, right? You can easily win if you have a good Katarina spot, but personally, I look at her and I'm a little bit like, you know, we'll see if I can end up playing around this type of beat. So I put her in B tier. Kabuko is hard to rank for me. I think Kabuko is S tier. I think that he's really crazy if you get 4 mentor in. But additionally, I feel, you know what, I'll put him in A tier actually. Because the problem with Kabuko is that a 2-star Kabuko feels so glassy if you don't have mentor in. Like, just a normal ass Kabuko, he does, I don't know what it is about him, but he just dies so fast. But he has really great traits, right? Heavyweight mentor. Mentor, he gives durability to everybody, which is amazing. He has a built-in stun, and as a 4 mentor bonus, he has like a giga stun, which can actually like win you a lot of games. As a reroll unit, he has great potential because obviously you reroll him and you play 4 mentor with some sort of other carries. It works out amazingly. However, the only reason he's not like in that giga tier is just because like I feel like up until he's a 3-star, he's kind of like a little bit and he's also hard to play around in the mid game. So I'm gonna put him in the A tier. Hard to play around because obviously, like, if you're playing mentor, you need to hit all the mentors or none of the mentors. So a lot of times he locks you out of being able to play some of the other units that are often really key and essential. And I also find that he dies too fast, in my opinion. But I think that's because of some nerfs that he got, because he used to be really broken. Next we have Lux. Lux I think is like average. Lux might be even worse, honestly, but I think she's like okay. She does like a decent amount of damage. She has built-in shredding. So if you're looking to do some more AP damage and you just want to like throw in a unit randomly, she's a great unit to throw in randomly if you're playing around AP, because the shred will make it so that you can bypass some of the armor, which is really nice. Or sorry, magic resist. So I think she's pretty good. I'll put her in B tier. But she's not like crazy or anything to write home about. I think like if you try and itemize towards her, there's some Lux reroll lines that are very niche, but I think they're just like a little bit out there. I don't think they're actually worthwhile to play right now. So I'll put her in B tier. Next we have Rakan. I think Rakan is pretty reliable. I really like Rakan as a tank. With 6 Protector, this Rakan unit is kind of a bit of a demon. I'll put him in A tier. Let's be nice to Rakan, I guess. Pretty reliable, pretty good. Shen, I think, is B tier. I think he's like a solid tank. But he's never like super crazy to me. I think if you have like certain combinations like Ornn artifacts, like Unending Despair, he can be a little bit of a monster. The problem is also that he suffers from being an edgelord. Edgelord isn't that great right now in my opinion. So like a lot of times like he doesn't get like it's like you don't really care about his synergy. You're just playing him as a bastion unit a lot of the time. So he's just kind of like a solid like frontline unit, but nothing more. Is what it feels like. Crew is also becoming less popular in lieu of the Jhin Malphite reroll comp, because that's just a better use of your gold, it feels like, because it's way more consistent. Right, it can cap equally as high if you hit a 5 cost and make it to like high cap, and it's just more consistent in the early and mid game. So Shen is getting less and less common to be played as well for that reason. Next we have Vi. I think Vi is pretty solid. I never think, like, I know there's Knuckle Duster's Vi that's really good, but in general, I think that she's, like, alright. She has some scaling effects, right, where she gets extra armor for all the components that you have, but it never feels super meaningful unless you have, like, a 3-star Vi or something like that. Additionally, she does do Sundering. So, similar to Lux, this is a unit you want to hold on to if you need to, like, reduce some of that armor magic resist, in this case, armor. Xayah, I think a solid B tier. Xayah, in my opinion, has changed of her quite a bit. I thought she was kind of like kind of shit. But nowadays, I think she's like pretty good as an item holder, especially like an item holder for Jinx in Star Guardian lines. But outside of like playing that, I feel like it's a little bit troll. There is Xayah reroll, like fan service with Rakan, by the way. I just find that it's not that great, and I think your spot has to be really specific for it. Like, you really want to have one of those augments that really powers up your units. Something like Tiny Team, for example, or even Double Trouble Xayah has done really well. But in my opinion, it's like, she's like alright. So, you know, it's like, it's an okay reroll line that you can play to just salvage a top 4 for sure. In the mid game, she's like okay as well. She has good spread, like in terms of damage, but I don't know. She's nothing that I look at and I write home as being like a crazy strong unit. I think she's very average. So, you know, like her spots are average. If you have a good spot for her, she's obviously a lot better, but nothing like crazy. Then Xin Zhao. I'll put him in B tier. I used to think Xin Zhao was up here. I thought he was like really tanky, really strong. I've played him quite a bit, and I find that without like specific soul fighter type of boards to boost him, he's kind of just like alright. So I'll put him in B tier. He's just like another one of those tanks that, you know, solid tank, doesn't really do anything crazy. Okay, so these are my 2 costs. I usually never fill out the D tier, because I think like to be D tier, I think you have to be absolute dog shit. I don't think any of these units are bad. Even Gangplank, I'll play a Gangplank if I hit a Gangplank too. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's a lot more condensed. It's just like, just the runaway is just Kaisa as a 2 cost in my opinion. Okay, let's go 3 costs. Ahri, I think is B tier. It's hard to say. I think Ahri sometimes does a lot and then sometimes does a little, and it really depends on her items and Star Guardian. She's really finicky in that regard. One problem that I have with Ahri is that her fruits are absolute dog shit. Like, she has such bad fruits, in my opinion, that a lot of times it's really hard to play around Ahri, even in your early mid game. A lot of times she's just like outclassed by a Syndra, it feels like, especially if you're starting on stage 2, stage 3. Unless you have like an RE2 and like perfect items for her, or really good items, it feels like she's like a little bit awkward. Even when you're playing Star Guardian, like I guess with Star Guardian you itemize the RE over the Syndra if you're like vertical Star Guardian. She did get buffs, so her Star Guardian bonus is really nice now, but she's like average to me, right? There's nothing crazy about her. She's like solid unit, does what she has to do, behaves like a good unit, uses items okay, and then also is a good item holder, which will eventually move on to the higher cost unit. That's exactly what a 3 cost should be. I think that's fine. So, B tier. She does have some synergies with Ornn artifacts, by the way, with the overkill, but nothing that I think is super crazy. Caitlyn, I think, is B tier as well. She used to be like Giga Broken. They nerfed her quite a bit. I think that Caitlyn reroll is still a thing that you could play. The problem with Caitlyn, I find, is that without Battle Academia, she's kind of completely useless. So it's kind of like a balancing act of how useful is she on a board, with or without Battle Academia. I think she can hold items okay, but it's kind of hard because a lot of the boards that you're making items for Caitlyn with, unless you're strictly playing Caitlyn reroll, aren't going to be Battle Academia items, because then you're playing AP items. But basically, she doesn't have her bullets bouncing if you don't have Battle Academia in, by the way. That's the main separation. I think that she could do really well. She does have the ability to snipe backline, which is really cheesy, but I think that whole line after they like nerf Silver Dawn, then they nerf Caitlyn a lot, is a lot more of a riskier line to play because it doesn't have the same kind of luster of win out potential, and it's a very expensive board because you're rolling a lot on level 7 for those 3 costs. So, you know, I don't think she's A tier or S tier anymore. I think she's like average, solid unit. Darius I don't like. I think is C tier. I think Darius is too hard to get to work in like a meaningful way. Darius is really good as like a secondary carry in a lot of Supreme Cell lines, but I find that a lot of times, like unless you have like a Giga Tempo Darius, which obviously this applies to almost every three cost in the game. If you have like a 2-star 3 cost on stage 2, obviously it's going to steamroll everybody. That's like a high roll. It doesn't matter which one of these 3 costs you have on stage 2, they're going to be pretty good if you're fighting against 1 cost and like shitter units, obviously. But I find that he doesn't do that well, and he often dies before being able to do damage. He has that problem of like, you really want him to have like an extra item slot, is what it feels like. Because like with 3 items, if you give him 3 damage items, he clears, but then he dies. If you give him 2 damage items and survivability, he survives, but he doesn't clear the damage. And that's what it kind of feels like. It's like a little bit awkward. You really want to just like be one-shotting and like resetting all the time. I can imagine in certain situations, if you can get him up to those stats, like with some sort of scaling in some way, he'll be really strong. I know Fusion Dance is a good option with him. We talked about it yesterday as well on the video. But to me, it's like, he's not a unit that I'm excited to look for, excited to play or excited to hold early on. Like, I'm not going to lose Econ to hold a Darius, is what I mean to say, unless I'm specifically playing Kai'Sa, and I'm going for Kai'Sa and Darius 3. Next we have Jace. I think Jace is solid. Decent damage item, decent damage user, could hold a couple items pretty well, and he also is pretty alright in terms of just being able to like fit in on some of the boards. It feels like the Battle Academia is pretty important to him as well, similar to Caitlyn, because he has like that extra shooting multiple units effect. The unit, he also has a little bit of like armor reduction, which is nice because that's just a feature that you can maybe play adjacent. But I think it's only if you have Battle Academia, so he's not as flexible as some of the other units. Lulu. So Lulu's hard to rank. I put Lulu in A tier, and I'll tell you why. It's not. I think the reroll lines are not particularly great without artifacts. So Rammus, obviously, that's like a Kai'Sa thing or like some other backline. So Rammus is like fine. You can maybe play around Rammus front line. Sure, whatever. Smolder. Smolder, I think, is a lot weaker now. And Kog'Maw, I think, is just bait. I think Kog'Maw is, even with the Caretaker, like, if you guys don't know, there's, like, the new way to play Kog'Maw is with this stupid thing. It's so annoying. I hate this one. Is with Caretaker. But it's still pretty high roll. But basically, you just constantly shield everybody. You play with a bunch of protectors. And because he, like, casts infinitely at one point, because once you get to level 30 Kog'Maw, he just, like, scaling his speed and, like, perma-casting, basically, from just auto-attacking infinite. Like, this type of build is really strong with Kog'Maw. But it's just so annoying, because if you don't have Caretaker, this unit really fucking sucks. Like, you could maybe use Fairy Tail on him, but even that, I think, kind of sucks. A lot of times, when you have a unit, like any of these units, in order to be strong mid-game and late-game, right, you can teleport. Obviously, if you can make it to a point where the Kog'Maw gets so many levels, or the Smolder, for that matter, gets so many levels where they're actually, like, really strong, then obviously they're, like, Giga Broken, they're S tier. But the problem is, they're not that strong anymore getting to those levels. So, the main thing that separates that is when you have artifacts. The artifacts make them really broken. So why am I putting it in A tier if I'm just complaining about the unit? Good question. The thing that they all provide is utility. Smolder provides anti-heal. Kog'Maw provides Shred and Sunder and is 30%. That's primo feature. No other unit. I don't think I've seen a unit. Don't quote me on it, but I don't even think there's a unit that shreds and sunders 30% within the last couple of sets that I've played. There might be one that's escaping me. Maybe it's like Yorick in one of those fucking whack-ass sets or some shit. But, like, for the most part, usually when a unit shreds and sunders, it's only 20%. Kog'Maw does it 30%, which is equivalent to items. So they're very efficient to just slot in on a board, especially mid-game, just to get the utility, which is nice. Especially if you're playing against boards where, you know, they have upgrades that this utility matters. So I think Lulu is great for those reasons. The reroll lines, I think, are specific, but if you have the conditions for them, can be very strong. So A tier, in my opinion, as a unit. Malzahar, I think, is B tier. Malzahar is kind of weird that if you have good items on him, he can basically just clutch out. So the thing about Malzahar is if you kill a unit, how do I phrase it? He hits everybody, and then he does damage over time. What happens is if the infected target dies, then the spread that he does goes on to another unit. If that unit is already infected, then it stacks. So basically what happens with Malzahar is like you kill nothing. You're just sitting around. He's tickling everybody. He's like the Giga Tickle monster. And he's like, woohoo! He's just tickling everybody. And then all of a sudden, one unit dies. And then it's like a fucking domino effect. And you like blink and everybody dies. Because what happens is the infection goes off the one unit that died to another unit, then that unit dies, then it goes on to another unit, and they all just die. There's so many times where you'll like be playing a fight, it looks like you won, and then all of a sudden your whole board dies and the Malzahar is alive. And it's like, what the fuck happened? And that's the crazy thing, right? Now the problem is that the Malzahar does nothing if you don't kill the first unit. That's what makes him really bad. Now he's really good at spreading utility. He's really good at spreading like Morello and other stuff like Void Staff, right? Because he hits like whole board essentially with the always hitting like an uninfected target. So he's like really good in those regards. So I'm gonna put him in A tier because I think that he's really good for those two reasons. However, note that he is a little you know what, I'll just put him in B tier. Like the problem with Malzahar is that he's so hard to rank, because if you ask anybody if this Malzahar unit is good, some people will say that he's broken and some people will say that he's dog shit. So does that mean that he's B tier if there's like no consensus on whether he's good or not? I think he's pretty good. I usually itemize my Malzahar early game. However, there are games where I itemize Malzahar and I just have instant regret of just not itemizing like a Syndra 1. Because like I said, if the Malzahar doesn't kill the first unit and the dominoes don't start falling, you just lose instantly, right? You can have I had a Malzahar 3 against a Juggernaut Udyr and I didn't kill the Udyr, so I lost the fight because I just couldn't get the infection to like stack, like that bonus effect to happen. So I don't know. It is what it is. It is what it is. Nico, I think, is pretty reliable. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the 3 costs are just B tier, if I'm being honest. Even Senna maybe might be A tier. I'm gonna speed through this. Swain here, Udyr here, Viego here, Yasuo here, Ziggs here. Maybe Ziggs here actually. Who knows? Maybe Ziggs here. Okay, let's go through them. Udyr, I think, is the only S tier. Mentor bonus is incredibly good. He gives stats. Juggernaut Duelists are also great. Colossal Udyr is a monster. He's basically the best tank in the game with Colossal. Even if you're not playing Colossal Udyr, you pretty much always play Udyr. Of all of the, I find that he is the most commonly played mentor unit out of all the other mentors, just because you can always fit him in as 2 Juggernaut or 2 Duelist. And it fits in a lot more easily because those are just primo traits, so he always is on a board. So definite S tier. Senna, I think, is really strong right now. Good synergies with like the Mighty Mech and Executioner. She fits in on a board, and she could also be like a primary / secondary carry with the Mentor Rise board. So I think she's like a solid A tier because she's actually really essential to some of those final boards. Then all of these, I think Nico, Swain, they're tanks. They do their tanking. There's nothing super special to write home around. Viego as well, I think, is like almost at that spot of being like a monster unit, but I feel like he's just like kind of like, he's another unit that you want to have 1 extra item with, right? If you give him 3 damage items, he does enough damage, but then he doesn't survive. And if you give him survivability, then like, you know, an Edge of Night or something, then he doesn't have enough damage, it feels like. He works really well with +1 range for that reason, but I think the +1 range playing around Viego is like a very particular thing, because you not only have to have the Viego and the +1 range, you still have to hit the Viego like on tempo, because he still falls off in that comp, it feels like. So be a little bit careful there. But in the future, if he gets buffed, maybe 15.4, I could see him being broken. And then Yasuo has like an obnoxious mentor bonus where he does like a stun and like jumps to a unit that's really far away and stuff. He's a pretty good item holder early game and stuff like that, in my opinion. But same thing. He's just like a generic melee style 3 cost. I don't see anything super crazy with him. Ziggs, I think, just sucks. I think Ziggs, outside of crew, outside vertical strategist, outside of very specific items as well, like attack speed and AP, I think this unit, I'm never excited to play him. I don't even item hold. Like if I see a Ziggs and I'm not playing crew, I don't think I ever buy this unit to put items on him. it's just, I did it like once or twice, and it always let me down. I said, that's it. I'm just never playing around Ziggs again. Right? You can play so many other AP units. I'd rather play a Syndra 1 than a Ziggs. That means that you failed as a 3 cost. You know what I mean? And it also means that Syndra's probably a little bit broken. But you know what I mean. It's like, ay. Next, we have 4 costs. So 4 costs, Akali. I think Akali is maybe D tier. We might move her up to C tier. We'll see how it goes. She got nerfed recently, obviously. Patch 15 point whatever. I think it was 15.2 B is when she got patched out as being like completely irrelevant. She has a cool kit, right? Basically, she accesses the backline and she can snipe and kill a backline unit. However, as of right now, it feels like you never really want to play or itemize the Akali because it's just way too inconsistent and she kind of just sucks. I think you can scam rounds with her if people aren't paying attention, but that's really all she can do is maybe scam around. You're basically just, the only time you would ever play her or itemize her is to literally just try and cheese somebody for like 1 round, which might be a valid strat, but eventually if they know that they're fighting you, they can just anti-Akali position as well and just make it so that you don't get the scam. And then she just doesn't keep up. That's the problem. She just doesn't keep up with the damage, and as a 4 cost unit, you really need to keep up with the damage, because why am I spending 4 gold on you when I can spend 1 gold on Syndra? And Syndra is probably going to be more reliable as a damage dealer. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, I'm doing an exaggeration there because Syndra is obviously really strong right now. But I'm just trying to exacerbate the problem, right? When you're investing into a 4 cost, you're investing your whole game plan into the unit. And if the unit doesn't feel like they're pulling their weight, then it's like whatever. Now, the only reason I'll move her up to C tier is because D tier I feel like is a little bit harsh, right? I play Akali on boards all the time because of the synergies. Even with Supreme Cell, she can be kind of good. The execute can also be good, and she can also what's it called? She can also like how do I phrase it? She can also be like a nuisance, which is really nice, right? Like a big distraction where units are going to be like chasing her to like different areas because she's jumping around a lot. So she does have some use on boards. So we'll put her in C tier for now. I said D tier. I can't decide because, like, you know, obviously, like, I've played Akali on my board multiple times within the past week. But a lot of it's because I was playing Supreme Cells. But that still means that they're probably not D tier because they've been playing on my board a couple times. Ashe, I think, is she S tier? She might be. I think she's just S tier. Her kit is so fucking broken. Why does her damage scale with attack speed? Like, why does she get more arrows? Like, huh? Like, it's so crazy. This unit does so much damage and can absolutely melt everybody. Like, I don't know. She's actually just so good. Like literally the entire comp is just Ashe carry only, and you can literally get like first with it. It's actually absurd. She's also Crystal Gambit, which means you can also play towards those win outs. Jarvan's stun is crazy and it can sway and win fights. I think Jarvan's S tier. Jinx, I think, is A tier. I think that Jinx can't do it on her own, right? The thing is that Ashe, I think, can do it on her own, but Jinx, I think, is usually the sum of the Star Guardians. And a lot of times, in order to cap out the Star Guardian board, you really want to play it from tempo to still be able to hit like your Seraphine and your high Star Guardian counts. Cassante, maybe we might have to switch around these tiers a little bit. Cassante is fucking insane. He just revives himself. Like a tank that revives himself, you just always want to play Cassante if you can. Karma. Oh, Karma I think is D tier. Wait. Is Karma worse than Akali? They fucking gutted Karma. It's so hard to tell. I played Karma with Manazane, Blightening Jewel, and she seemed good. But I'll say that again. I played Karma with Manazane, Blinding Jewel. Like, how many games are you having Manazane, Blinding Jewel? I think she's C tier. I don't know. Leona, I think, is A tier for sure. Insane tank, really hard to kill. Poppy, for what it's worth, I don't think she's as good of a tank as Leona or Cassante. I think she's B tier. Outside the Star Guardian line, she really doesn't do anything. But Leona and Cassante, like, maybe Leona's a little bit dependent on Battle Academia, but Cassante's obviously better of a tank. Leona, even in Battle Academia, I think is tankier than a Poppy 1-for-1. And I think this Poppy has some cool things that she can do, like with shield popping, doing damage. There's like a fruit for that. And then also with, like, you know, Unending Despair or some synergies like that. She can be kind of broken, but eh. Rise, I think Rise is like, Okay, mentor bonus is really good. Gives mana to units, right? Executioner, strategist, mentor, 3 synergies, really good. In terms of damage, I think Rise now is good enough to be in that A tier of like a good damage dealer. So I'm down to put him in A tier. Samira, I think Samira is also C tier. Samira just doesn't cut it. I don't know what they were thinking. But you know, it is what it is. Set, I think Set's in B tier. Set's really tanky, but he also needs like the synergies to get going, is in my opinion. And it's hard to like fit into a board. I think if you play Vertical Juggernaut, you notice that Set's like an absolute monster. But outside of Vertical Juggernaut, I feel like he's kind of like, you know, very specific in when you play him. Oh, Volibear. Volibear is also C tier. Yumi is A tier for sure. Let me look at this one more time to see. Okay, all of these units have a big flaw in that they are just not up to snuff with the current landscape of the game. I think I'll put Akali down. I think these ones are maybe better because, I think like this. They're all like bad, okay? It might be like this actually. Would people be offended if I did this? Like, you just can't play these units. You can play Samira sometimes. Like, it's like this. Like, that's what it feels like. But, you know, there's always going to be some person with a Reddit post that found a Volibear line that nobody heard about before, which is essentially, like, just hit Braum on level 8 or else you go 8th because, like, the comp doesn't fucking function without Braum anymore, right? Okay, let me try and explain this. Samira with Soul Fighter is fine to play for a top 4. So I feel like she's C tier. Akali, you usually only play if you're playing Supreme Cell. Outside of Supreme Cell, this unit is absolutely fucking useless, and you will swap them out for like literally anything else. It literally does nothing. Like, you could try and itemize her, you're just better off itemizing somebody else. It's actually just a waste of items. So it's just harsh, but it's true. Karma fucking sucks now. So you only reason you want to play Karma is if you're specifically trying to do some sort of weird Mighty Mech board, but 7 Mighty Mech isn't even that good anymore. It looked good at like the first day of the patch, but now that everybody started playing Yumi, it sucks as well. So like, I don't think she's any good. And Volibear, some people want to play Volibear with like, what's it called? You play Volibear with like Swain reroll, and Bastion is like the new wave. Everybody's talking about it on like whatever. I don't have Twitter, but I assume it's on Twitter because like I heard about it from some streams. But like, I don't even think that's good. Like, this Volibear unit just doesn't function correctly since they changed him. And the problem is the Volibear is like close to being good, by the way, but it's just like, it's so much of a Braum check. Like, whenever you play this, if you don't have like 4 Luchador in, like, it's so bad. Like, it's actually just so bad. So I'll put them all in C tier just because, like, you know, I don't want to offend anybody, because I know like as soon as I say any of these units are bad, somebody's gonna say that they're like really bad, and somebody's gonna say that I'm really stupid. But like, I would not click on any of these, barring Samira, if I have a very aggressive Soul Fighter tempo spot, right? This is the only one I believe in out of these 4 to like even like consider playing. B tiers, just because I feel like outside of their main lines, they're not that great. A tiers, I think these are all solid options, and Leona obviously being a really good tank, but I don't think she's like S tier level of tank. Ashe board is crazy. I think Ashe is just really strong. I think Ashe can get nerfed and she would still be strong. Like, there's so many parts to that board. Like, the board got giga nerfed. Like, Guinsoo got nerfed, which was her best item. Colossal got nerfed, and the comp just crept back to being one of the best comps in the game still, right? It's crazy. Jarvan stun can win a fight instantly. Like, if you pick the right side with Jarvan and you get the fight win, that's literally it. So this Jarvan, I think, is S tier. You know what? We'll put Jarvan in A tier just because he's not that tanky. Okay, I can agree. He's not that tanky, and his fruits are really bad. He just got the Mana Rush fruit back, but besides Mana Rush, all his other fruits are pretty trash can. So we'll put him in A tier because of fruits. Cassante, unkillable Demon Lord. Like, he's absolutely a monster for sure. He revives himself. It's crazy. So he fits himself in on so many boards, either as main tank or secondary tank, just because he's like one of the best tanks in the game. And this Yumi unit, it literally shapes the meta, right? Like, so much of the meta is like who can deal with Battle Academia Yumi. Like, you will just earn so much LP if you just play Yumi every single game. I shit you not. Like, if it's uncontested, right? She's really flexible on items as well, because you don't need to have like the perfect items to make function. Like Ashe, for example, you need to have Gwinsu Kraken, but once you have Gwinsu Kraken, she's like an absolute monster. Yumi, you don't need to have like Archangels, you don't need to have JG. You can like play around with the items. You can make like, fuck it, just make her Giant Slayer, who knows, right? But her scaling and her general like fit into the board is just so powerful that it's great. And the flexibility also helps quite a bit. So definite S tiers. I'm pretty happy with this. Like I said, I would probably do this, but I don't want to like, you know, I don't want to deal with everybody telling me that I don't know about the one Volibear line that they played and they got first in. And you know, it's like, I don't care. I'm never like, it's not worth it. It's not consistent enough for me to play. But I'll put them all in C tier just to be nice. But I kind of like this breakdown. Finally, we have the 5 costs. So 5 costs, similar to when I was talking about the 1 cost units, I kind of talked a little bit about like, hey, you know, this unit is rerollable. Hey, this unit does whatever, etc. Right? When I think about 5 costs, part of their power budget to me is also where or how they can cap your board based on like giving you like extra utility and stuff, right? So for example, Braum. Braum to me is S tier because as a unit, he provides a stun. He also provides the champ, which can easily just win you a game or win you rounds, right? Because like, or win you placements, excuse me, because he just saves you HP. So it's absolutely broken. He also has like an execute, right? With if their HP is low enough, he'll just throw them off the board, which is crazy. So all of that is really good value. Braum, you can throw into your board, no synergy, and he would still be a meaningful impact to your board. That definitely gives him a buff as a 5 cost, because as a 5 cost, the 5 costs that are always feels worse or feels weaker are the ones that don't fit into your board easily, right? Like if I see a random Yone, I'll just rank Yone. Yone's gonna be B tier, right? Like a Yone, if I just throw in a random Yone, he does dick all. He does nothing, right? Obviously, I'm playing Mighty Mech and Edgelords and I have really good Yone items. He's going to do a lot because he got buffed as well, right? If I have range snipers focus Yone, he's going to be really cool and he's going to do a lot of damage. But if I just find a Yone and I throw him onto a random board, he's not going to do anything. He's going to die instantly and he's just going to suck. He has a stun as well. Doesn't matter. He's not that good of a unit. He's not tanky enough, doesn't do enough damage, and he has specific synergies, specific traits. He's a damage dealer. So you need to have items for him to do damage, or else he doesn't do anything because his main job is a damage dealer. Braum, if you just win the round, you get +1 HP basically. And he's a Bastion, which is easy to fit in, and he's a Luchador, which is often easy to fit in, and he just grabs a unit and spins them around for like, I don't know how long. It's like infinity. Here it says 1.5 seconds, but I shit you not, I don't think it's 1.5 seconds because he spins them for 1.5 seconds, then he throws them. And the throw, I don't think is part of the 1.5 seconds. Maybe it is, but it's crazy. He can displace the front line. He can just scam rounds like that because you can get a wrap on the back line. He just throws the tank the wrong way. If somebody has a Braum, you can't play solo frontline tank anymore, because if the Braum just grabs onto your solo front line, he throws it away, he completely invalidates your comp, right? Like it's just GG. So like that's what I mean. There's a clear difference, even though they could have value in it. That's why I rank them a little bit differently, especially as 5 costs, right? Gwen, for example, I think also is hard to fit in, hard to make work. Sork now is also a lot weaker, so she's not a common unit you would play around. If Sork was still really strong, she would be A tier, but Sork isn't really a viable board anymore because of how badly they nerfed Karma. So now you really only want to play Gwen when you're playing Soul Fighter Tempo, which is very specific, or if you're playing something else, because a random Gwen isn't really going to do anything except maybe like spread Morello or spread other stuff. She's kind of going to suck, so I think she's in B tier. Lee Sin, I think, is good for his ability to like swap in based on his traits, but if you're not playing a trait that Lee Sin could get active, I feel like you don't really want to play Lee Sin, so he kind of fits in that same tier of these units. Seraphine, however, she fits in on some boards really nicely because of Star Guardian and Prodigy. Those are boards that are right now really relevant, so it makes sense, but Seraphine also can just convert random items into a good chunk of damage. Prodigy is also a 2 trait, so if you can get it active, it just gives mana to your board, which is really nice. So I feel like Seraphine is a great outlet of just like throwing shit on, and works really well. And obviously she's a really high cap potential for a lot of the boards that are really strong right now, and she does a lot of damage. I think she's definite A tier. Twisted Fate, I think, is not as crazy as Braum, but I think he's in that same A tier. you can often play a Twisted Fate and just use him to get some extra stacks or some extra items. He also stacks infinitely with Rogue Captain. Obviously, if you're playing crew, it's a win condition, but I think he's a great unit to just play around, get some cash outs, or strengthen your board. He also fits in on like the Fast 9 Giga board, which is also very strong in A tier. Varus is similar to these units, the Yone, the Gwen, and the Lee Sin. However, Varus is so strong right now that there's actually like a full dedicated strategy of if you can Fast 9, you Fast 9 into Varus primary carry. For that reason, he's going to go into A tier. You usually play him as a primary carry that you aim to carry, and it's a Fast 9 Varus board. If you watch any tournaments and somebody has to play for first or play for win, Varus just does so much damage. He's one of the highest cap units in the game. A lot of people, if you're looking at just the strength of the unit alone, Varus would be S tier. But in this ranking of 5 costs, I personally value how useful they are on multiple boards. Varus, usually you only are playing as a dedicated Varus, like Fast 9 Varus board, for which you're aiming to Varus, or he only fits in on like a Sniper Jhin kind of board to cap it out, or maybe a Kale board, you know what I mean? So he's not a unit that you play just like you see a Varus and you play a Varus and it's good. You usually have to aim and itemize to make sure the Varus does well, similar to these B tier units. However, he is a win condition unit, because if you hit a Varus 2 and you have items for him, you can just play that as your main carry, and there's very few boards that will outcap that. Braum gets S tier because Braum has the champ, and he has the stun, and he has the execute. So he's a lot more easy to just slot into any comp, which I think is a big value in my power budget of 5 costs. Zyra as well, I would put in S tier, because you just throw her in on any board. She's not like the highest damage dealer by any means, but getting the extra frontline unit and getting the extra attack speed, a lot of times she's an amazing unit to hit, and it's very rare that I don't want to play a Zyra on my capped board, because she will just like help your board cap out really high. That is my final listing. Of course, like I said, with the 5 costs, I rank them a little bit differently, not just their pure innate power, but I usually budget in their utility as the ability to just play on your board and cap your board really high. So that's why I put Braum and Zyra a little bit higher. Obviously, if I'm playing a game and I have Varus items, Varus is going to be way better than these two. Obviously, if I'm playing a game and I have TF items, it's going to be better than these two. Obviously, if I'm playing a game and I'm playing Prodigy, or I'm playing Yumi, or I'm playing the other thing, Star Guardian, obviously the Seraphine is going to be the unit that I care about more. But in the average case, if I'm just looking for any 5 costs to play at any level, these are the ones that really stick out to me. Anyways, those are my rankings. I usually do this once or twice per set, so I hadn't done it yet. I just did one in PBE, talking about like how cool I think the unit designs are and stuff. So that is my final ranking, or talking about them. Usually these videos I use more as like an explanatory thing, where I kind of talk about the units, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how I kind of evaluate them. So, you know, don't take it to heart. If you see a unit that you think is really strong and you play all the time, keep playing them. I don't care. If there's a unit that you think is really weak that I said is really strong, same thing. Don't play the unit. I don't really care. A lot of this just comes from my own personal experience and my own rank journey, and how I kind of evaluate these units based on the different factors that I mentioned in the video. But anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and see ya. Bye-bye.